In these videos, I've been sharing about how Bible stories follow a similar storyline, and God reaches into humanity, touches the lives of specific people in specific times and places, and reveals His heart, and then humans respond. That's the storyline we've been talking about. And Scripture gives us lots of examples of human response to God. Some responses are wonderful, and some are awful, and some are, indifferent. In my first video, I shared about Mary. Confused and afraid as she was when God reached into her life, she responded with faith and humility and submission. And her part in God's story is wonderful. In my second video, I shared about King Herod, threatened and afraid. He fought against God's revelation. He tried to stop it, and his response in ordering the death of all newborn baby boys, hoping to kill Jesus, is just awful. And in between the wonderful and the awful, there's another response. Today I want to talk about the innkeeper in the Christmas story. And first of all, a disclaimer. No specific innkeeper is ever mentioned in Scripture. Just that there was no room for Mary and Joseph in the inn. And so this maybe fictional innkeeper, he may never have existed. And the innkeeper has been personified in the Christmas pageant, in the Christmas story, in order to tell the story of why Mary and Joseph ended up in a stable and not in the inn. And that said, I think that Christmas pageants that paint the innkeeper as a terrible person are pretty unfair. Scripture doesn't say anything about this character, let alone that the innkeeper was a jerk. I do think, though, that the fact that there was no room in the inn sheds light on a whole group of characters that exist in this story, and in every Bible story. And that cast of characters, who often remain unnamed, are neither heroes nor villains. They're simply onlookers. The onlookers see and hear about what's going on, and if they choose neither to support or to oppose, they find themselves doing nothing, and they remain indifferent. I believe God reaches out to this group in His story, and they have a part to play. God invites them to be curious, to be open, to be listening, and most importantly, to be willing to accept simple inconvenience in order to learn more or to look deeper. The onlookers in Scripture who do this discover God, and the indifferent remain nascent characters in the story of God's revelation, and God's reach isn't able to touch their lives. Imagine the situation. It's a bustling hotel lobby, and a tired couple and a very pregnant woman are inquiring about a room for the night. The fact that no one, neither innkeeper, if there ever was one, nor hotel guests, nor other onlookers offered to be inconvenienced in order to make room for them, shows a problematic response to God. Apathy. In our busy lives, we can so easily miss the simple and compassionate ways to serve others at mere inconvenience to ourselves. And Scripture is pretty clear that God takes it personally when humans care for one another. Matthew 25:40 says, "Inasmuch as you've done this for the least of these, you've done it for me." When we care for others, it's as if we care for God Himself. And God's ways are so often revealed in seemingly insignificant stories about seemingly insignificant people. Yet in the middle of these inconsequential circumstances, God extends handles that not only the protagonists of the story can grasp, but onlookers can lay hold of as well. God shows up in our circumstances every day, in big moments and little moments. His reach in these times often feels inconvenient. And if we're not curious, we're not open and listening and willing to be inconvenienced, we can so easily ignore Him. However, being curious about God and allowing God to inconvenience us in order to learn more about Him can be the gateway into a whole new realm of relationship with God. So as you consider the Christmas story and apply it to the every story in your life, or every other story that reveals God's reach into humanity, consider the myriad ways humans respond. In faith like Mary, in opposition like Herod, or in various degrees of apathy like the innkeeper. Preparing room for God, as we sing about in the Christmas hymns, requires that we remain attentive as onlookers, curious and eager to discover God's revelation, especially in the seemingly insignificant circumstances of others.